adequate margin of safety between the levels which are causing harm, as documented in this National Research Council report, and the doses that people are likely to get. Nowhere near an adequate margin of safety. But one of those studies indicates from China that IQ in children had lowered to 1.9 parts per million. And this is one of my major concerns, that the level of fluoride in mother's milk is incredibly low, 0.004 parts per million. So that at birth, the baby's blood-brain barrier is not fully formed, which means that fluoride can enter the brain. We've now got 100 animal studies which shows that fluoride can damage the brain. They acknowledge this, and we now have 23 studies which indicate that fluoride lowers IQ in children.
In 1999, that the predominant benefit, the way that fluoride worked, was topical, not systemic. In other words, it works on the outside of the tooth surface by this mechanism, not from inside the body. And the moment that they admitted that, it removed the whole rationale for putting fluoride in the water, which is you're meant to swallow, and removed the rationale for forcing this on people that don't want it. It's the height of arrogance for government bodies to force citizens to take a medicine if they don't want it, especially if they can't demonstrate over these one at a time. It's unusual. Most countries in the world do not fluoridate their water, including 97% of Europe. It's unethical. We should never use the public water supply to deliver medication. But obviously, once the fluoride or medicine is put in the water, you can't control the dose, you can't control who it goes to, and you're violating the individual's right to informed consent to medication. It's unnatural. If you look at the level of fluoride in mother's milk, baby's first meal, there's very little there. The concentration is extremely low, 0.004 parts per million. This means that a bottle-fed baby in a fluoridated community like Dallas is getting about 200 times more fluoride than nature intended. That is reckless in my view. It's unnecessary. Fluoride is not a nutrient. There's not one single process in the body that needs fluoride. And most people now agree that if it works at all, it works topically. It's unsafe. There is no adequate margin of safety to protect all our citizens and all our children from known harmful effects. I'm most concerned about fluoride's impact on the brain. There's now been 37 studies which indicate an association between fairly modest exposure to fluoride and lowered IQ. In 9 studies, the level at which fluoride did this was less than 3 parts per million. That offers no adequate margin of safety to protect all our children against lowered IQ. It's ineffective. The World Health Organization publishes data on 54 and 12-year-olds, and since the 1960s, tooth decay has been coming down as fast in non-fluoridated countries as fluoridated ones. The largest survey ever conducted in the United States showed no statistically significant difference in tooth decay between children who've grown up in fluoridated communities and non-fluoridated communities. And a recent study from 2009 showed that
So what they did was they did a study here in the United States. This is a study that's been published in the journal Environmental Health that found that states with higher portion of artificially fluoridated water had a higher prevalence of ADHD. They said this relationship held up across 6 different years that they looked at. To sum it up, they said states in which a greater proportion of people received artificially fluoridated water in 1992 tended to have a greater proportion of children and adolescents who received ADHD diagnoses after controlling for socioeconomic status. In other words, they looked at Delaware, for example, and Iowa. Both states have relatively low poverty rates, but they have heavily fluoridated water and have heavy levels of ADHD. Now, they even quantized this with a model. The scientists produced a predictive model that calculated that every 1% increase in the portion of the U.S. population drinking fluoridated water in 1992 was associated with 67,000 additional cases of ADHD 11 years later, and an additional 131 cases by 2011 after controlling for socioeconomic status. Now,
unnecessary, unsafe, ineffective, and there are better alternatives of ways of fighting tooth decay in low-income children. I'll go through these one at a time. It's unusual. Most countries in the world do not fluoridate their water, including 97% of Europe. It's unethical. We should never use the public water supply to deliver medication, for obvious reasons. Once the fluoride or medicine is put in the water, you can't control the dose, you can't control who it goes to, and you're violating the individual's right to informed consent to medication. It's unnatural. If you look at the level of fluoride in mother's milk, baby's first meal, there's very little there. The concentration is extremely low, 0.004 parts per million. This means that a bottle-fed baby in a fluoridated community like Dallas is getting about 200 times more fluoride than nature intended. That is reckless in my view. There's not one single process in the body that needs fluoride. And most people now agree that if it works at all, it works topically. It's unsafe. There is no adequate margin of safety to protect all our citizens and all our children from known harmful effects. I'm most concerned about fluoride's impact on the brain. There have now been 37 studies which indicate an association between fairly modest exposure to fluoride and lowered IQ. In 9 studies, the level at which fluoride did this was less than 3 parts per million. That offers no adequate margin of safety to protect all our children against lowered IQ. It's ineffective. The World Health Organization publishes data on tooth decay in 12-year-olds, and since the 1960s, tooth decay has been coming down as fast in non-fluoridated countries as fluoridated ones. The largest survey ever conducted in the United States showed no statistically significant difference in tooth decay between children who grown up in fluoridated communities and non-fluoridated communities, fertilizer industry. Now that stuff cannot be dumped into the sea by international law. It's too concentrated to dump locally, but it's one of the vagaries of the hazardous waste regulations in this country that if someone buys a hazardous waste, it becomes a product. And that's how public water authorities are able to put this hazardous waste into the drinking water. The important thing is that this is not a pure substance. It's contaminated with all kinds of things, including arsenic, lead, for which there are no safe levels at all. So by using these chemicals, at the very least, you're increasing cancer risk in the United States of the whole population.